I'm Michelle with Colorado Model Railroad Museum and STEAM Kids Virtual Classroom. We're learning about geology this month, and we've talked about the rock cycle. So today we're at the Poudre Learning Center to look at it in real life. And I'm here with Amy.
Hi.
And Ambrette.
Hello.
At the Poudre Learning Center. We're going to learn about this river that's behind me, the Poudre River, and how rocks are formed through rivers.
Welcome to the Poudre Learning Center, and thanks so much for joining us today. We are out by the Poudre River. Have you ever thought about where the Poudre River gets its name? Interesting. Look behind me a little bit and think about if you were an explorer and you were just coming up on a canoe in the Poudre River. You have your canoe, it's full. You are struggling to go upstream. You've been collecting some furs. Perhaps you have a lot of gunpowder in your boat. Where could you store it so that you could go further upstream and not have to work so hard? Well, the early fur trappers did exactly that. They came with their boats loaded. They moved upstream and up into the mountains, and they got tired. And so they stored their gunpowder along the edges, along the banks of the Poudre River. In French, poudre means powder. Cache le poudre means store the powder. And so our river that we're standing next to that starts way up in the mountains actually got its name early on from the fur trappers. So as you guys are looking out, see if you can notice some evidence of things that might have happened in the past, because today we are going to be stream detectives, and you're going to help me figure out what happened in the past to this stream that might happen again in the future. So let's look around just a minute. Look over at the side of the banks. Think about what's going on over here. Do you notice some differences? Do you see where the river starts to form little riffles, little waves? Why do you think they're doing that? Did you think about a change in elevation? Maybe the idea that the river is going downhill just a little bit more? I think that's what's going on there too. Look over there and see what you notice with the waves. We seem to have an upstream, and now the water is flowing downstream. Can you think of a force that might help it move downstream? Why would it increase in its speed? I'm thinking there might be an elevation change right here. Let's look closer. Let's see if we can find some more evidence of what might be happening here. Well, I was wondering if you guys could help me be stream detectives. We said we had some things that happened in the past that were around here. As you look at the bank over here, do you notice anything with the tree, this beautiful cottonwood that's been here for a long time? Do you notice anything with its roots? Do you see any evidence of perhaps how high the river might have gotten in the past? What would have caused that to happen to the bank of the river? Let's see if we can do a little bit of an experiment here. I have 2 twigs. I'm going to toss them into the water here. Can you predict what you think might happen to the twigs? Which ones might stay in one spot? Which ones might be carried downstream? How does that affect what we see underneath? Also, how does that help us to figure out where erosion, the carrying away of sediments, and weathering, the breaking down of earth materials, where those occur on our river? Let's see if we can find out.
There we go. Perfect.
Did you notice what happened here? The stick weight that we threw over here just kind of stayed in one spot. Slower water can't hold the sediments, and so the sediments begin to drop. faster water, did you see that when the stick was thrown over here? The faster water carried the stick with it. Faster water can hold more debris, more rocks as it carries along because it has more force. So where we see water slowing down, we're going to see evidence that the sediment has started to seep down. Where the water is going faster, we might not notice something else. All right, let's continue on our investigation and be stream detectives to look for a few more things that'll tell us what's going on. All right, stream detectives, let's see if we can figure out a little bit more about what's happened in the past. As I was walking to our next spot, I noticed on this willow some debris that's been found. Let's see if we can look at it a little bit closer. What do you think caused this? It kind of looks like a bird's nest, but it's not a bird's nest. Do you think water could have carried this? What evidence does that give us in terms of how high the water would have been in this area? Notice the ground. Do you see any larger rocks? Do you see some sand? Where do you think those larger rocks came from? Do they have anything in common? We're going to look at them a little bit closer on the other side of these willows. It's amazing how the different spheres of our Earth, the atmosphere, the hydrosphere, the geosphere, and the biosphere all work together. We were just on the other side of these willows just a minute ago, observing the river. The biosphere would be these willows, but also would be the frog that Amberette just pulled out of the river. They work together. The river and the geology all are part of the geosphere. The atmosphere, our weather, what's going on with the air above the ground, all works together as well. Each sphere works together to make our planet a unique place. But let's look again just at the geosphere and look at the water and the stream. We talked about areas that the river is going faster and it's able to carry its load. Also where the river is going slower, where it's going to deposit. So in geology, we talk about something called erosion. And erosion is the carrying away of earth materials. The weathering piece is that of breaking apart the earth materials. And the deposition is where it's deposited or it's left. Let's see if we can find out a little bit more about that. We're going to throw a couple more sticks into our river and see if we can find out what's going on. Where is it carrying its load? It's moving faster. Where is it going slower? I'll give you a hint. Sometimes you can watch bubbles. As you look in the river, you might see bubbles that are floating. Sometimes those bubbles in the river will tell me where the deepest part of the river is. It's called the thalweg. I can also see where bubbles might be circling, and that's an eddy. Let's see what you guys can find out as we drop those sticks into the water. Where the current is going the fastest, like right in here, you'll notice that the stick is going to move more quickly. Sometimes water will actually seem to go back upstream and circle. That's called an eddy. If we look right over here where the stick went and where those bubbles are, you'll notice that some of the bubbles actually seem to move and go back upstream. Can you think about how those two things came to build the little island that is right here? This island wasn't here just a few years ago. This area was just flat and the water was flowing pretty quickly throughout it. But somehow or other, the earth changed through deposits or deposition right here on this island. I'm also standing on something called a sandbar. I'm on the inside of the stream. Do you think the water on the inside of a curve would go faster or slower. Let's look over at the outside of our curve, the outside right here. I noticed that the water's going faster and it's actually undercutting the bank over there. That's really interesting. So a sandbar occurs on the inside of a stream. An undercut happens on the outside of a stream. I picked up this rock that was down on the sandbar. I wonder where this rock came from. Did you say the river? I think you're right. But we said the river starts way up in the Rocky Mountains. That's where these rocks came from. Every rock that you see here has been carried down from the mountains and deposited here, which is pretty cool. If you guys will look around you for a minute, let's see if we can be those stream detectives. We know that these rocks came from up in the mountains. They were carried by the river, deposited here. But as you look around you for a minute, you'll notice that this isn't a flat area, this sandbar. It seems to have a hill over here. It seems to have a depression over here where there's actually some water. We know that upstream, the water moves all of this debris downstream. Why was it deposited here? Let's see if we can find some clues. I'm standing up here on this hill that we just looked at. When I look upstream, I notice that there's some willows. And I'm wondering, did the water carry all that debris here? Why was it left here? When I turn and I look over here, oh my goodness, I notice a lot of debris. That's not a beaver dam. That actually is debris left over by a flood. Do you see some logs that were maybe part of a fence? Do you see some big pieces of tree? Wow, water can carry a lot. Water is really powerful. Why do you think it was deposited here? Could it have been that the water carried it, ran into these cottonwoods, these trees, slowed down, deposited its load? Do you think that this hill that I'm standing on might have come from right over there? Years ago, before 2013 flood, this area was all flat. After the flood of 2013, we ended up with a big deposit here that was gouged out from water flowing over the willows, becoming a waterfall and pushing up everything into this area. Again, things that are deposited, sediments. Later on, you guys are going to learn more about how do sediments become rocks. Right now, this is just a sandbar with sand, clay, pebbles, some cobbles, and rocks brought down from the mountains. Pretty cool thing. Looking at our earth and how it changes is pretty amazing. We've walked out of our stream bed off of the sandbar into what we call the Poudre Canyon. This is our own PLC Poudre Canyon because it was formed by our Poudre River. Here at the PLC, we've noticed some changes. In fact, just a few years ago, this area was flat, just like the prairie is over here. But there was an event that happened that caused this to form. The sides eroded. The material that was here was carried away through erosion. But I noticed here that we have some sand, just like we did on the sandbar. We have some river rocks that have been rounded. I wonder where these could have come from. What do you think? How is this canyon formed here at the PLC? Do you think that it will continue to get deeper? Do you think it might get wider over time? What would cause those events to happen? Let's think about it just for a minute. I see river rocks. I see sand. I see evidence on the sides here where erosion and weathering has taken place, where it's begun to come down. I'm thinking that maybe during that 2013 flood, the water was stopped by those cottonwoods. The debris filled that up, forming kind of like a dam. The water had nowhere to go. I think it might have come out through this opening right behind me, flowed out of the river through this, carrying with it everything that was in this path, the dirt, the sediment, the soil, carried it further that way, toward the south. Did you know that the flood that year actually took the river water and took it all the way to the buildings at the PLC? That's a long way. Floods are pretty powerful. They help to create the landscape that we see around us. As you guys are out and about where you live, look for evidence of places where you might see erosion, where things have been carried away through water, places where things might be weathered, earth materials that have been broken up. Maybe you might see a rock that's been split in two. That's part of weathering. Look for areas where you see deposits, where water has deposited what it was carrying. Thank you so much for coming to the PLC. We would love to have you visit the PLC. Bring your family along. Do some investigating on your own. It's amazing what you can find out in nature and things that you can learn. We can't wait to see you at the PLC.